Welcome. I want to say I so appreciate you joining us for today's conversation. This is Lauren Fogelman with Business Success Solution, and today's topic is Blueprint for Success, Mastering Strategic Planning for Accounting Firms. And we're going to be having a conversation today with Michelle Skeena. So here's what to expect from our conversation. Building that roadmap for success, business growth planning explained, from vision to reality, measuring progress and adapting your plan, and the art of planning, overcoming challenges to achieve growth. I absolutely suggest that you have pen and paper ready because Michelle is going to share a lot of things that you could be doing to implement, and then we'll wrap up with letting you know how you can connect with her if you want to have a further discussion with her. Anyway, a little bit about Michelle. Michelle Skeena owns 3 successful companies and has 30 plus years as a certified public accountant. Michelle helps business owners and entrepreneurs develop business growth plans and to execute on those plans. She also helps strengthen financial literacy across all levels of an organization, and her dream is for everyone to experience financial freedom in their business as well as their personal lives. As the chairwoman of NABO's Next Generation of Women Business Owners Committee, she contributes to the success of women-led businesses. And Michelle is the 2022 award recipient of the NABO Susan Hager Legacy Award. If you want to be able to check her out, what Michelle does, and Beyond Strategy Partners, which is her business, you can go to beyondstrategypartners.com. So, Michelle, let's just go ahead and jump right into the conversation. So happy to have you here.
Thanks, Lauren, for having me. Sounds great. I'm really happy to be here, and I look forward to having this discussion with you.
Absolutely. So before we actually get into it, how did you get into this angle of strategic growth and really helping businesses be able to move their ideas further so it can be more aligned with their vision?
It's a great question. So I knew I always wanted to have my own business from the time I was 13 years old. And I started off in a public accounting firm, and I was an auditor in a public accounting firm. And the audit process there was very unique because we were taught to start with our client, understanding our client's strategic plan, its financial plan, and its focus for its future in order to do the work we needed to do to ensure the financials were actually presented properly. And it was fascinating to learn this process and to see what my clients did at a very large scale. Like, these are large companies across the United States. Some were multinational companies. And I thought to myself, it really hit me that one day when I had my own firm and I was serving small to medium-sized businesses, we could do the same thing with them. We could help them understand their strategic direction, their vision. We could help them, if they haven't done this already, create their financial plan and then align both the financial plan with the strategic plan so you could work in harmony to fulfill on the vision you had for the reason why you created the company in the first place.
I love the fact that this company had the foresight to really look at these things together in order to align the financials with where a business wanted to go. One of the things that I feel can be very generic and everybody looks at it a little bit differently is business growth plan. So how do you define a business growth plan?
I completely agree with you. And when I bring this up with those I'm just meeting for the first time and we start talking about business planning, some actually say to me, well, I've done that before when I had to go achieve investment in my company or develop or create a banking relationship. They wanted me to create a business plan. That plan is so large, it's just keeping my shelf up. Instead of the shelf keeping it up, it's keeping my shelf up. We don't use that anymore. Or someone will say to me, yes, I have a budget. Or someone else might say to me, yes, I've created my goals. But that's not what we're talking about here. A business growth plan it's an internal operational plan where you're actually working with your stakeholders, your team members, your leaders, or even if you're a solopreneur, you're working with perhaps your accountant or someone who's integral to your company to create your vision for the future, and then create a growth blueprint, a plan internally on how you're going to fulfill on that vision. It has goals, action plans, strategies. It's a combination of these elements so you can grow and scale your business, and you use it on a regular basis.
And so one of the things that I'm hearing is that when you have this plan, it's different than organic growth, which is what so many businesses happen to do. So can you explain a little bit more as to why someone would benefit more from having this business growth plan as opposed to going the route of organic growth?
Sure. And I'm a fan of organic growth. It's wonderful, and yet it's not sustainable, right? So when you create your business growth plan, you're using it to gain greater clarity and to help you to focus on that vision that you've stated, either to yourself in a room somewhere, or to the members of your company. And it really, getting it down and getting it written actually helps you to create the goals that you've stated. I don't know, Lauren, you probably already know this, but if for those that write down their goals, when you write them down, you're 42% more likely to achieve the goals than if you haven't written them down. And so, but it's not just important for you, right? So if you have this business growth plan, you then can use it to convey it across your entire company or with those that you need to work with. It's a clear, document that everyone can read and be on the same page with.
And part of what you're actually talking about is the neuroscience of how people work and function. When you were talking about the fact that when you take your goals, get it just out of your head, you write it down, there's a 42% more likelihood of achieving them. The other part is that when you actually now share it with your team, which you were saying, that actually probably increases the odds exponentially as well, because now it's no longer a secret. There are other people that are able to support you. They are able to bring other skill sets to the outcome that you might not have yourself. Is that part of what you've seen as well, Michelle?
Yes, it's true. And they feel part of something, right? When you don't keep this to yourself and you share it and you work with your team to create it and then use it to execute on the plan that you created, you're causing alignment among your key leadership, your team members. You're causing accountability among your team members. And people, when they become part of something and they actually can, I don't know, some get pushed into it possibly, but some take it on themselves. But when they become part of that, they feel compelled to really support the goals and the vision. And so they're working together. Greater confidence evolves. I mean, it can really sync to performance and process improvement across the entire company. And again, it could be one person within the company. It could be hundreds of people in the company. This process can work no matter what size of company you are.
And talk about working and success. It's one thing to write it down and have this vision and maybe start to see some of the details to fill in the gaps of how to get from where you are to where you want to go. But is there anything that you would say is a way to gauge whether it's actually working well or not?
Yes. I mean, the obvious part is, right, your financial and operational goals are being achieved, right? Because we're reviewing our results as we're going through and executing on our plan. So we're seeing the results as they happen. But again, I think I keep going back to it's more than that, right? Again, for ourselves, if we're solopreneurs or if we have team members, we see those changes in behavior once goals are realized. And when people achieve their goals, they feel more satisfied, confident, and empowered. And to me, sometimes I feel as if that's even more important than the financial and operational goals, because that's a key driver to a company's success. That could be a course correction in some of the retention issues we're seeing in the marketplace currently. And, when you see that change in behavior as a leader, you feel satisfied. I just happened to meet with my team this earlier in the week, and we talked about, we took a look over the last year, and I said, so let's take stock. So tell me one thing that you feel really good about that occurred over this last year. And my tax lead said, I feel great because we met the goal on our timing and deliverables during tax season. It's the first time we were ahead of where we said we were going to be. And I could see the excitement in her eyes. And we said, well, what caused that? She said, well, the reality is that I actually used the team to help achieve the goal. And I asked for help. And that was a big advancement for me. And that, as the owner of the company, as the CEO, that's what I want to see more of, as we move our team forward. And that to me showed me that my planning is working well.
And with the plan, is there a suggestion as to how often somebody ought to be reviewing it to see if it is working well and if they're moving forward like they're supposed to?
Yes. It could be different depending on the size of business, but I would recommend that at the very least, we're reviewing our plan against our actual results on a quarterly basis. In some instances, I would say monthly.
And I think that that's so important for us to not assume, because what I've seen with so many business owners that develop a business plan, because as you said, it's usually an external source that's encouraging them to do it. It gets done and then it's filed away in the filing cabinet, whether it's a virtual one or an actual one, never to be seen again until somebody else is asking for it. So I think the fact that you're saying that we want to be looking at it on a quarterly basis creates a little bit more structure where maybe you're going to now take the work and actually follow through with it. So I have one more question about that now. You were mentioning with your team about course corrections. So how does adaptation fit into goals? Because to me, goals are like, okay, you set this goal, this is what you're working towards, and it's very specific and concrete. So how does adaptation fit in?
Right. That's one of the reasons I see some that don't plan, right? Because it's rigid like that, right? And, as you know, plans are plans and plans change, right? And we can have we have our goals and they're very important to have, but, something may occur, maybe an overused example is a global pandemic happens, right? And plans change. There are events and circumstances beyond our control that have to cause us to course correct. But once we create a plan and we start using it to execute, we then have an ability to be able to make tweaks to those goals for another period of time so that we can get back on the track that we wanted to be, or maybe have to change it as a result of those circumstances. We want the plan to be our driver, to help us focus on where we're headed. And yet we also have to understand that something may occur and we have to course correct. But because we already have it written, it's documented, we're using it, we can do so more swiftly than if we didn't have one.
Okay, what that's bringing up for me now is about juggling the short-term goals with the long-term vision. Can you kind of explain how that balancing act actually works a little bit better?
Right. That balancing act is one that takes practice over some time, right? But we always have to keep our vision in mind. We have to keep moving toward it. But one great benefit of planning is that we're able to break down that longer term vision. We like to use 3 or 5 years in creating a vision. We can break that longer term vision down into smaller time frames, manageable time frames with goals within those time frames and action plans so that we could chip away at the short-term goals while we have that long-term vision in mind. But it's not only in mind. Let me correct myself. It's written and we're seeing it, but we're breaking it down into those smaller manageable pieces. And I think that also helps some people even get started on planning. We can have the vision, but when we start smaller, it really helps us to build our muscles to actually utilize this on a more regular, consistent basis.
And do you ever build in times to celebrate?
Yes, I love to celebrate. Didn't you love celebrating? I love celebrating.
So can you give an example maybe of a shorter term goal that you or your team achieved and how it gets celebrated? Because celebrate doesn't mean that, oh, everybody takes a week-long cruise or something like that. But acknowledgement is so important.
Right. So our goal of, our goals around tax time are actually our shorter term goals. Our longer term vision is to really build a sustainable tax advisory practice. We have revenue goals and profitability goals, or a vision for revenue and a vision for profitability around that. But in the short term, it's about successfully completing one tax season, right? And so because we did that, we have weekly Zoom calls. We were able to share what really excited us about achieving that goal. Each person did in our Zoom call. And then we celebrated with an end of season dinner, if you will. And we all got together and had some drinks and had some dinner.
Excellent. So I think it's just so important not just to focus on what's not going well, because there's so much that could be happening where you get these learning experiences, but to also acknowledge the achievements and the celebrations to give your team encouragement to keep on moving forward. So I love the fact that you all got together for drinks and celebration.
We did too.
Yeah. And so, the execution, there's a gap between sometimes ideas and execution. And some people are great at follow through, but not everybody is a great follow through. Some people are more the visionary. So are there any problems that you commonly see with really implementing and executing the growth plan, and any ideas on how to be able to resolve those or be able to deal with those?
We do. We see, sometimes it's hard to trust the process. We created this plan. It's not working, or it's not working as fast as we want it to. Sometimes I have been guilty of that in the past. So it's hard to trust the process. And we're busy as entrepreneurs or CEOs or key leadership in companies. We're very busy, and going to this remote world made it easier to get more done. But the reality is now we're trying to get more done and fitting a lot more in. And I've seen situations where the process isn't standardized. And for some of us, it's not in our DNA to plan. We know what we know how to do it well. And planning is not one of those that we've really been able to do well because we haven't practiced it. And I also see a problem in that we don't reflect on the plan or the results of the plan, right? So I say we start out by, keeping it as simple as process and correcting some of these. And what I mean by that is we have to put time in our calendar. We could start today and put time in our calendar for the year. I had said, you had asked before, how often do you review it? quarterly. Well, then if we know we're going to start there, right, then we actually review the plan on a quarterly basis. That is helping us to work the execution of it. We have meetings where we talk about the action plans or the, the work that we set up to do, that roadmap that we created to achieve our goals. You should set up regular meetings with your team members to see how they're doing, talk to them about, where they are in the process of achieving a goal or where they're falling short so that they could course correct. And we don't want to fit it in. We want to give that time, put that time in our calendars, and we want to make that non-negotiable time so that we can actually, so we're actually able to learn from this process, and it's pushing us to execute in a way.
Mm-hmm. When you're doing this with an organization that has team members, do you recommend it being on-site or off-site?
We do a combination of both. I should say we do either or and a combination of both. Right. So I do recommend, I don't call this strategic planning, but there is an element of strategic planning within this, right? And so I recommend at least a half day or a full day with your team, maybe for smaller companies, a few hours, but you have key people present at the meeting and you're in person, you have an agenda, you have a framework, and you really are using it to brainstorm and collaborate and create what you want, 3-5 years to look like. You do, some of that work on site. And then through the course of the year, if you don't have regular meetings for check-in in person, you can do those virtually.
And when I love the fact that this is going to be something very intentional as opposed to an afterthought, and putting something on the calendar on a quarterly basis, probably at the beginning of the year, is going to make sure that those meetings do happen on a regular basis. Also, checking in with the team members is so important because they see things from a different perspective than you might as the business owner. So anything else that you feel is important to note as far as checking in order to be able to keep the business growth plan moving forward?
Yes, you might pick up from, what we've been talking about here, but you really need a structure. You want to have a structure and a framework for creating your business growth plan, and you want the process to be standardized because the greater, the framework really allows you to do the work that's necessary in planning. And it allows you to do the evaluation that supports the execution. So I really encourage companies to standardize their process around planning.
And I agree with you about the structure, the framework, the process. Is it sometimes better for someone else to be leading this project forward instead of the CEO?
Yes. Yes. And, sometimes it's, you have an outside, firm that helps you to do, to train and develop you in so doing. And then, the CEO is responsible for the overall plan, right? And the goal would be that, key leadership in different departments or different areas have their plans that are connected to the CEO's plan, and each department and leader, they're fulfilling upon their goals, and the CEO is overseeing all of that, right? So you really have the external help to really help you get stronger in this area, but then you have key leadership and some of your executives really doing the work here to achieve the company's goals and plan.
And is that something that other companies engage your firm for, is to really help with that as the outside, creating that structure and making sure that they're staying moving forward and paying attention to things?
Yes, because what I explained for some may sound easy, right? But what we've seen in practice is, aligning the vision, aligning the overall plan that the CEO is responsible for with the other, plans in different divisions or different departments or different areas, they're sometimes not in sync, right? And companies really need help and some expert guidance to help get that in sync, because the more in sync you are, the more efficiently you'll be in realizing the goals you set.
And I think that that's so important is, sometimes doing it internally is not the best solution for achieving a long-term result. And sometimes you need to really invest in someone that has the expertise to move you forward, aligned with your vision, as opposed to thinking that you have the skill set to do it yourself sometimes.
That's right.
You want to think that as a business owner, we can do it all ourselves and we can make it happen.
That's right. I learned a long time ago. I always say this to my hairdresser: you're really good at what you do, so I'm going to allow you to continue to cut my hair while I'm going to continue to do what I need to do to move the things I need to move forward. So, I mean, that's a simplistic way of looking at things, but I think it's similar here in this discussion.
I fully agree. And one of the things I have heard you talk about is about goals cascading down from the overall vision. Can you maybe explain what that means? Because I love that concept of cascading down, but being able to really have an understanding of it would be helpful.
Sure. And we talked a little bit about it, right? But, when we talked about, having one overall plan and then maybe a plan, I mean, if some of your, some of the accountants in your network are listening to this, some of us have a consulting practice, an accounting services practice, and a tax practice, and we might have someone that oversees each of those areas. Well, their goals need to really align with the overall company goal, right? And so their goals cascade down from the overall company goals. And then it's really important for them to be in sync, because the strategies that are moving those goals forward, the action plans that are moving those goals forward need to be all in alignment with the goals themselves, or we can find ourselves veering off track. And, we can come up with many ideas, but then we get off track. And what happens is we are, spending some unnecessary time in doing what we need to do to fulfill upon our goals, which ultimately lead to fulfilling to the company's vision. So it's when we cascade down, we're working to be in sync with the overall company goals, to the department or division goals, to what we need to do to fulfill at that level, so that we can really, it can all work in sync together.
Then part of what I'm hearing is that there's like the primary goal, which is like the parent, and then there might be different children in the family.
That's right.
So each department might be like another child, but that all together as a whole, the family unit is growing and moving forward.
Correct.
But everybody might have different roles to play in order to be able to achieve that larger vision.
That's right.
And one of the things also when I'm hearing this is that there's definitely structure to what you're talking about, but my feeling is that it's a little bit of art as well as science. So
it is.
And because that it could get messy at times. Do you, how do you feel about the art part of it, the more creative aspects of it?
All right. So some of our, famous painters or authors, I mean, they didn't start out with, their most influential painting or their number one selling book, right? It took a few times, right? But to me, it's like you have a clean slate. The canvas is empty, and you get to add to that canvas, or the pages, bare, and you get to start writing your story. This is like the story of the company for the vision that you've had in starting the company. So got this clean slate. You can add to whatever you want to add to it. We get to dream big, which is part of the art of it. And then we use the structure to rein it in. So it's a great complement. The art's a great complement to the science of it, because if we could really let ourselves see that there is this beauty in something we're putting together, That's the art and, to this process. And it can be fun, it's imaginative. It's all of these while it's scientific, mathematical, behind a structure that we have.
And I think that the compliment is that you have a system, but because there's an overall system, it gives you a lot of freedom for flexibility within it to achieve what is right for that company. And that system can also maybe be applied to another company and that has a little bit of a different vision. But the system gives a lot of freedom and room for creativity within it.
I would agree with that. Flexibility is key,
Mhm.
and probably it's a very good word to use in this discussion because we've been talking about standardizing, but standardizing can have flexibility to go along with it.
Michelle, I think that we covered a lot about the business growth planning. I always learn from you whenever we have a conversation together. And that some of the things we covered is building that roadmap for success, the business growth planning explained, going from vision to reality, measuring the progress, being able to adapt the plan, the art of planning in order to overcome challenges and achieve fulfillment and growth. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you and have further conversations and find out more about Beyond Strategy Partners, what's the best way for them to connect?
Well, they can go to our website. Should I share that?
Yeah, please
link?
go ahead and share.
Okay. www.beyondstrategypartners.com. And or you could reach out to me directly at mskina, I'll spell that, MSCHINA at beyondstrategypartners.com. Beyond Strategy Partners is all one word. I would look forward to talking with anyone further about this and just getting to know who you are and more about your company.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate the engaging conversation. And to everybody that joined us, this is Lauren Fogelman with Business Success Solution, showing firm owners how to double their income, working half the time.